Florida didn't fall apart because people were reckless. It fell apart because the numbers stopped cooperating. Insurance surged first, then taxes followed, then utilities and upkeep quietly crossed a threshold that ordinary households couldn't sustain. Ownership didn't collapse overnight. It just stopped making sense. The mistake is assuming Florida was unusual. What happened there wasn't an exception. It was an early exposure of a system that only works when risk stays theoretical and costs remain predictable. Once insurance prices begin reflecting future conditions instead of past data, the entire housing equation changes. And across the country, that recalculation is already underway. This isn't about taste or politics. It's not about who should live where. It's about basic math. When the cost of holding a home rises faster than incomes for several years in a row, demand doesn't disappear loudly. It fades quietly. People stop buying. Then they stop staying. What you are about to explore is not a list of collapsing states. It's a ranking of places where the calculation is starting to bend. The states that are showing early strains to advanced failures, or call it Florida's footprints. This isn't clickbait and it's not fear. It's numbers. If you want to understand where housing is actually headed next, you'll want to watch this through. And subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Number 10. Minnesota. Minnesota sits near the bottom of this list because, at first glance, it looks insulated. No hurricanes, no wildfires at scale, no coastal flooding threatening entire metro areas, and compared to the Sun Belt, housing still looks manageable. But the pressure here is subtle and structural. Between 2021 and 2025, homeowners' insurance premiums in Minnesota rose roughly 30%, driven by hail damage, wind losses, and more frequent severe storms across the upper Midwest. These aren't headline disasters. They're repeated, insurable events that quietly eat insurer margins and drive repricing. Property taxes are the bigger long-term issue. Minnesota's effective property tax rate now averages around 1.11%, with suburban counties around Minneapolis and St. Paul routinely exceeding $3,200 annually on median-priced homes. Add rising winter heating costs, which spiked again during the 2024-25 cold season due to natural gas volatility, and non-mortgage housing costs are no longer trivial. For households earning the state's median income of roughly $82,000 last year, insurance, taxes, and utilities now consume about 10 to 12% of gross income before mortgage payments. That's still survivable, but it's moving in the wrong direction. Minnesota remains stable because climate risk hasn't yet forced insurers into retreat, but the math is tightening. This is where Florida stood 10 years ago. Number 9. Ohio. Ohio continues to attract buyers priced out of coastal and Sun Belt markets. On paper, it works. Median home prices remain under $250,000 in much of the state. Insurance is still relatively affordable, and wages, while modest, match the cost structure better than in many growth states. But the trend lines are turning. Severe weather losses in Ohio have climbed sharply since 2020, driven by tornado outbreaks, flooding along the Ohio River Basin, and hail events that insurers once considered rare. As a result, average homeowners' insurance premiums crossed $1,600 annually last year, up nearly 40% in 5 years. Property taxes vary widely, but counties around Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland now average $2,800 to $3,400 annually on median homes. Utilities are also becoming less predictable as aging infrastructure struggles with heavier rainfall and freeze-thaw cycles. Ohio's median household income sits near $71,000 last year. For many homeowners, non-mortgage housing costs now absorb 11 to 13% of gross income. Again, manageable, but no longer cheap. The warning sign isn't collapse, it's stagnation. Migration into Ohio slowed sharply in 2024, and population growth has flattened. Ohio hasn't broken, but it's no longer a pressure-free alternative. Number 8. Colorado. Colorado's housing problem isn't sudden, it's cumulative. Years of rapid in-migration into Denver, Boulder, and the Front Range pushed prices higher long before climate risk entered the conversation. Now that wildfire exposure, water scarcity, and insurance repricing are layered on top, the cost structure is starting to strain even high-earning households. Homeowners' insurance premiums in wildfire-exposed counties rose 35 to 50% between the last 5 years, with many households pushed into the state's insurer of last resort or forced to accept higher deductibles and reduced coverage. Property taxes remain moderate by national standards, averaging around $2,400 annually on median homes, but utilities tell a different story. Summer electricity costs rise with heat waves. Winter heating remains volatile. And HOA fees in newer developments frequently exceed $300 per month. Colorado's median household income now exceeds $90,000, yet non-mortgage housing costs commonly consume 13 to 16% of gross income in the Denver metro area. The issue isn't affordability today, it's trajectory. Wildfire risk continues to expand eastward. Water allocations from the Colorado River Basin remain under pressure, and insurers are pricing homes based on what the state will look like 10 years from now, not what it was 10 years ago. Colorado isn't failing, but it's no longer flexible. Number 7. North Carolina. The refuge that stopped feeling safe. North Carolina spent years marketed as a climate compromise. Mountains inland, beaches along the coast, cities that felt affordable compared to Florida, Georgia, and Virginia. That narrative cracked in the mid-2020s. Western North Carolina experienced record rainfall events during the last 24 months, causing flooding in areas historically considered low risk. Coastal counties continue to face hurricane exposure and rising flood insurance costs, and insurers have responded by raising premiums statewide, not just along the shoreline. Average homeowners' insurance premiums have exceeded $2,100 annually, up nearly 30% since 2021. Property taxes remain moderate, but utilities and insurance together have become the dominant cost drivers. For households earning around $67,000, non-mortgage housing costs now absorb roughly 12 to 15% of gross income in many metro areas. That doesn't sound catastrophic, but it's happening fast. Net domestic migration into North Carolina slowed sharply, particularly in mountain counties that once attracted climate migrants from Florida. The realization arrived quietly. Geography alone doesn't guarantee safety anymore. Number 6. Arizona. Heat as a permanent expense. Arizona's stress isn't theoretical, it's monthly. By 2025, Phoenix experienced more than 30 days per year above 110 degrees Fahrenheit, with overnight temperatures offering little relief. Air conditioning is no longer seasonal. It's continuous. Electricity bills of $300 to $450 per month during peak summer are now common for average suburban homes. Insurance premiums average around $2,000 annually and continue to rise due to wildfire exposure and storm losses. Property taxes add another $2,200 to $2,500 per year in Maricopa County. HOA fees in master-planned communities often exceed $250 per month. Add it together, and non-mortgage housing costs routinely reach $900 to $1,100 per month. At a median household income of roughly $78,000, Arizona homeowners are now dedicating 14 to 18% of gross income just to keep the house operational. Water is the looming variable. Colorado River allocations remain constrained. Lake Mead levels remain historically low. And while conservation has delayed crisis, it hasn't eliminated it. Arizona isn't collapsing, but it's moving faster than people expected. Number 5. South Carolina. South Carolina still evokes images of warm beaches and historic coastal towns, a gentler alternative to Florida's frenetic growth. But that image masks a housing market under pressure from the same forces that rewrote Florida's story. Charleston, Mount Pleasant, and surrounding lowcountry counties once beckoned as affordable coastal living. Today, coastal insurance markets in South Carolina have become stressed. While exact statewide averages vary, reports show homeowners' insurance premiums in coastal counties rising sharply as underwriters recalibrate risk models to incorporate sea level rise, storm surge, and recurrent sunny day flooding linked to high tides, flooding that happens with no storm at all. These physical realities translate to financial ones. Flood insurance, which remains separate from standard homeowners coverage, now adds thousands of dollars more in annual premiums for many ocean-facing properties. Property taxes in Charleston County alone exceed $2,000 yearly on a median home, and rising utility bills further compress household budgets. South Carolina's median household income sits near $63,000, but when insurance, flood coverage, taxes, and utilities are layered together, non-mortgage housing costs now eat into 15 to 18% of gross income before mortgage payments are even added. That's the same math pattern that, a decade ago, began to stall Florida's housing market. But the deeper sign of strain isn't in a single stat, it's in migration trends. Domestic inflow into the state, once strong, has slowed noticeably in recent years as buyers reassess whether coastal appeal outweighs escalating costs and climate exposure. South Carolina isn't collapsing yet, but for many families, the household balance sheet now includes a climate premium they didn't anticipate when they first considered moving there. Number 4. Texas. Texas has long been the symbol of modern American mobility. No state income tax, a sprawling job base in tech, energy and services, and relatively cheaper homes made it a destination for buyers fleeing high-cost markets. But that equation is shifting. Last year, Texas regained its position as the state with the most inbound moves according to U-Haul's Growth Index, a signal that population flows remain strong even amid cost pressures driven by jobs and housing supply. But beneath the headline, the story is more complex. Insurance markets in Texas have tightened considerably. Across the state, homeowners' insurance premiums have climbed faster than income growth, reflecting repeated severe weather events, storm surge threats along the Gulf Coast, and flood exposures inland. National data indicates that homeowners' insurance premiums in high-risk states like Texas rose by significant margins in recent years, often far above the national average increase. Property taxes in major Texas counties have also ballooned. In Harris County, Houston area, and Travis County, Austin area, homeowners now routinely pay $4,000 to $5,000 annually solely in property taxes on a median-priced home. Utilities, strained by heat waves that lengthen the cooling season, have risen sharply too. Combined, these non-mortgage housing costs hover near $1,000 or more per month for many homeowners, absorbing 15 to 18% of gross income before mortgage payments are even factored in. For a state with a median household income near $73,000, that's a structural squeeze. Perhaps most telling, though, is what doesn't appear in Texas's migration figures. While inbound moves remain robust, the rate of growth is slowing compared to pre-23 trends, and areas once heralded as the next big boom, mid-tier cities and exurbs, are showing signs of cooling as buyers adjust expectations to actual carrying costs. Texas's narrative of endless growth is now intersecting with a reality all too familiar. Housing cost math eventually reasserts itself. Number 3. Virginia. Virginia's challenge is different. It isn't headline hurricanes or unbounded heat. It's that a large portion of its housing stock sits precisely where rising sea levels intersect with sinking land, a physical condition known as relative sea level rise. This slow but persistent process has turned flooding from a rare event to a recurring expense for homeowners along the Tidewater region, including Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Unlike sudden disasters, this kind of chronic flooding doesn't attract dramatic news cycles. It shows up in insurance renewals and in documents for property closings. Middle-income homeowners in these areas now face standard insurance premiums of about $2,000 annually, property taxes that often exceed $2,200 in Virginia Beach, and more in Norfolk, plus an additional $800 to $1,200 in flood insurance for many properties. Add HOA fees and utilities, and non-mortgage housing costs easily approach $1,000 per month, or roughly 12 to 15% of median income even before mortgage payments are factored in. That calculation doesn't account for the value side of the ledger. Houses in recurrently flooded neighborhoods have shown weakened demand compared to similar homes inland. Buyers now price in projected climate exposure, reducing offers for properties once thought stable. The regional economy complicates this further. Norfolk is home to the world's largest naval base, anchoring tens of thousands of jobs. That gives the region economic heft other exposed states lack. But it also means the infrastructure, docks, runways, supply networks, cannot simply relocate inland without enormous cost. Virginia's housing challenge isn't a sudden shock. It's a slow compression of value, affordability, and fiscal capacity. Signals that predate most public awareness and now show up in municipal budgets strained to maintain aging seawalls and flood control systems. Number 2. New Jersey. If Florida was the early warning and Virginia the slow burndown, New Jersey represents something closer to a flashpoint, a place where high housing costs intersect with climate stress and insurance market contraction all at once. New Jersey's housing market never had the low-cost advantage of the Midwest or South. Its high property values, coupled with the nation's highest effective property tax rates, have long made ownership expensive. But that was before escalating flood risk began to seep into premiums and buyer math. New Jersey has some of the largest shares of affordable housing units exposed to annual flood risk of any state in the U.S., a pattern that is projected to intensify markedly by 2050 if climate trends continue unabated. That exposure doesn't just exist on paper. It now shows up in insurance availability. Many private carriers have pulled back from the most flood-prone coastal zip codes, pushing homeowners into state-backed or surplus lines, coverage with higher prices and thinner protection. Standard homeowners insurance premiums in New Jersey already run above $2,400 annually on average, with shore counties routinely much higher. Property taxes, often $8,000 to $15,000 a year on median homes, add another layer, and flood insurance commonly adds thousands more. Even with a median income near $96,000, these costs absorb 17 to 27% of gross income before mortgage costs. In a high-cost state, that margin is no longer a buffer, it's a limit. The result is a housing market where carrying costs stifle demand, particularly among middle-income and younger buyers who once saw the Northeast as a career and lifestyle launchpad. Net domestic migration data show New Jersey among the leading states for outbound moves in recent years, particularly from coastal counties where climate burdens are most acute. New Jersey's situation reveals a core truth. When climate risk, insurance costs, and structural tax burdens collide, even relatively wealthy states can find the housing math unsustainable. And finally, we have California at number 1. If there is a state that illustrates how unmoored modern housing math has become, it is California. Here, every thread of the affordability crisis, wildfire risk, drought and water uncertainty, insurance market contraction, high property taxes compounded by local assessments, extreme utility costs, and geologic risks, comes together. By 2025, California was home to a staggering share of the built environment exposed to severe wildfire danger. Roughly 5.6% of U.S. homes facing severe or extreme wildfire risk are in California, representing nearly $1.8 trillion in property value exposure, more than any other state. That alone places enormous stress on insurance markets. In multiple zip codes and counties, major insurers have either pulled back significantly or placed restrictive conditions on new policies. Far from being an outlier, this exposure is now baked into the cost of ownership. Median homeowners' insurance premiums in wildfire zones regularly exceed $3,000 to $5,000 per year. If coverage is available at all, rates far above many other states, and rising as underwriting shifts toward forward-looking risk models. These models are framing premiums based not on past fire frequency, but on future climate projections, a fundamentally different approach that accelerates cost increases. Property taxes, while capped under Proposition 13, are bolstered by local bonds and assessments, pushing many middle-priced homes into annual tax bills between $6,000 and $12,000. Utilities add another $300 or more monthly, particularly where electric rates have climbed significantly due to wildfire liability and grid reinforcement costs. Taken together, non-mortgage carrying costs in California's risk zones often exceed $2,000 per month before mortgage payments, consuming 19 to 33% of gross income for many households even with a relatively high median income, around $92,000. Add HOA dues and specialized hazard insurance. Earthquake coverage is often separate, and the arithmetic becomes stark. This is why migration data continues to show California as one of the states with the strongest net outbound flows. Buyers can still move in, and jobs remain concentrated in key metro regions, but the cost of maintaining a home in many parts of the state now exceeds what middle-class families can sustain without extraordinary income growth. That's not a statistical anomaly. It's the outcome of decades of risk, weather change, and market repricing. California doesn't fail first because it mismanaged growth. It fails first because it's a microcosm of every disruptive force colliding in one place. The pattern is now clear. From South Carolina's rising premiums to California's compound cost crisis, the same equation plays out again and again. Climate risk increases, insurance markets retreat or reprice, household carrying costs rise faster than incomes, and demand softens quietly. This isn't a narrative limited to a few states. Realtor.com's latest climate risk analysis shows more than a quarter of U.S. homes, worth roughly $12.7 trillion, are now exposed to severe weather risk like wildfires, floods, or hurricane winds. Risks that all feed directly into insurance pricing and property value trends. When insurance costs rise to represent a meaningful share of a home's value, when utilities are no longer background numbers but ongoing budget shocks, and when taxes and assessments creep up to fill municipal gaps, the simple math that once made homeownership wealth building begins to fail. Florida wasn't an outlier. It was the first large public display of a deeper shift. These pressures aren't evenly distributed. Some communities remain relatively insulated, and demand for real estate still exists across vast swaths of the country. But the logic that drove housing decisions for decades, buy here, stay long, build equity, is now an active calculation. Will the costs of holding this home exceed its long-term value? The answer is becoming clear in the states at the top of this list. If this video helped connect some dots, hit subscribe. And if it raised questions, the comments are open, because the housing story is bigger than any one state.